something that we really all need to work on. I hate the idea that we're not optimistic about the future. We should be. It's just crazy that we're not.
This is The Payoff with me, Sylvia Jeffries. Russel Howcroft, welcome to The Payoff.
Thanks, Sylvia. Nice to be here with you.
Well, I'm honoured to have you on The Payoff. You're a very, very busy bee. You're Mr. Melbourne, and at the moment you're burning the candle at both ends, aren't you?
Well, we've just come back from Tokyo, where we've done breakfast radio, so our 3AW breakfast, and so Tokyo's 2 hours behind, which means so I normally get out of bed at 4 a.m. to start on air at 5:30. So that meant I was getting out of bed at 2 a.m.
Wow.
Tokyo time. And then at 4 p.m. we had a cocktail party with all the people that had purchased the Ross and Russ tripper deal to Tokyo. And so we were very busy, and it was tiring, but I'd never been to Tokyo before.
Isn't it an amazing city?
Oh, it is extraordinary, actually.
Well, and everything's a billboard, so you'd love a place like Tokyo.
Well, yeah. I also love it because I think if you boil it down to one word, the whole thing, what I saw of Japan, which is only Tokyo and obviously just parts of Tokyo, but just respect. Respect seems to be the override. Like if you wanted to boil it down to a word, which people like to do, it's obviously respect for each other, but then respect for nature, respect for their environment. You know, as we all know, there are no bins on the streets of Tokyo. And what's interesting about that is that us bogan Aussies, we immediately comply. You know, here I was walking down the street. I had the same bit of chewy going for 3 hours because, you know, I'm either going to swallow it or I'm just going to keep on chewing on it because there's no bin and you wouldn't ever, you know, spit it into a bush, for example. Like you might slyly do that here. Not saying I do, Sylvia. But, you know, it's so you immediately, the signal that the city sends is this sort of huge signal of respect. Respect each other, respect the environment, as I was saying. So, and I really enjoyed that. You know, and yeah, people are polite and they're decent and they care for each other. Now, there are issues in Japan, so it's not all amazing, but the baseline, if you just sort of consider what I just said as the foundation stones of a society, they're going pretty well.
Yeah, they've got that sorted.
Yeah.
It's vibrant. It is so bustling. How did you feel coming back to Melbourne again after that?
Well, I mean, Melbourne, for us Melburnians and those that like, well, most Melburnians love the joint. You know, it's one of our great passions, I think, in life is our love for Melbourne. And you know, our city isn't going as well. So 2017, we were the most livable city. Now, you got to sort of think that through. All the cities in the world, this thing where we live was seen to be the most livable city in the world. We're still in the top 10, so, you know, that's still obviously excellent. But we need to, I think, for our own well-being, we need to be back at number one.
How has it slipped? Where is Melbourne?
Well, it all started, you know what, it actually didn't, my view is it actually started before COVID, but COVID really accelerated it. So before COVID, there was this, and it's very hard to describe, but I did have a number of meetings on the subject with the city, in that there was just, you could sort of feel this lack of energy and you could feel a lack of new ideas. You know, we have this, I mean, I call it, we've got a calendar economy. And if I want to be really even crueler, we've got a cappuccino economy. You know, Melbourne basically operates on the back of calendar, as in events, and selling, you know, hospitality, food, wine, beverages, cappuccinos, right? So that is just so important to who and what we are. And that is good news, but there's been nothing new. Okay, so let's say that is core to our success and core to our economy. What have we done in that space that's new and interesting and creative, you know? So Austin, Texas, of course, is the best example with South by Southwest, which is an incredibly successful, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars goes into the economy off the back of South by Southwest. Yeah. And of course, it's created another Silicon Valley. You know, it's almost like you got Silicon Valley, California, which is Democrat, and you got Austin, Texas being, of course, more Republican. So that's probably part of what's going on. And yeah, and you know, and then Melbourne needed, and still does need, something, let's say something like that, which is energising design, creativity, activity, new businesses. I can talk for hours on this, Sylvia.
Yeah, well, let me interject briefly because The main reason for me wanting to speak to you today, among many topics,
Yeah.
including your incredible career in advertising and life on the Gruen transfer, of which I've been watching for many, many years.
Thank you.
I want to speak specifically to a clip of you which went viral,
Yeah.
in which you said it has never been harder to be a 30-year-old in Australia.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to argue with that on that point. That's the premise of this entire podcast. But I'm very keen to know what makes you so convinced of that statement.
Well, the numbers, so I think that you can make that. You can put the proposition out there that it's never been harder, but then you can prove that that's the case, and you can prove that that's the case with regard to, well, HECS debt. HECS debt has doubled in the last 10 years. The fact that it probably costs you minimum really 8 times the average salary. So when I was 30, so get this, it's only one generation ago. I've got a 30-year-old daughter, so it's one generation. So when I was 30, we were a single income household. And let's say I had 3 children at 30. I didn't really, but let's say I did. Early 30s, I had 3 children. So single income household. I had a mortgage in a suburb, inner city suburb of Melbourne, and I was able to sustain 5 people. I was paid well. I was good at what I did. But there is no way a 30-year-old that is good at what they did would have the money today to be able to afford what I could afford at that age.
Because wages are stagnant.
Basically,
and the house prices have gone.
Yeah, I mean, in the advertising,
the roof.
what I earned when I was 30 years of age. So I'll tell you the numbers, right? Yeah. I would have been earning, more than 200 grand.
Yeah. In your early 30s.
Yeah, probably 250 at 30 even.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So but maybe I was well paid.
That's pretty well paid.
So maybe I was pretty well paid.
For someone in their early 30s, that's pretty good money.
But there wouldn't be anyone, there'd be very few people in the advertising industry at 30 years of age on that sort of money.
Yeah.
There may be some. But there'd be very few, I would think. And so, that's part of my anxiety for 30-year-olds is, I want people to have a better life than the life I've had. I don't want my children and her friends and anyone that's 30, I don't want their life to be worse than mine. It should be better than mine. And what we've managed to do, and this is really in the Western world, not just Australia, but what we've managed to do is we've managed to suffocate all forms of optimism. So pre-me, the 50s and the 60s were all about the future and optimism. Walt Disney, he created Tomorrowland, Disneyland, right?
Yeah.
And the Jetsons, right? So the Jetsons was about optimism, and that was done in the 50s. And so there was this view that life was going to get better, and we would be better off, and we would be richer in all forms of wealth. And frankly, my entire life, there's really only been one period of absolute optimism, which would be mid-90s to 1999, which was an amazing time to be around before the dot-com bust. But mid-90s, the advertising industry was, awash with creativity and ideas, and you had new startups happening all over like Seek, for example. I worked on Seek when it just started as a business. Now that's worth many, many, many billions of dollars. And being in the ad world, traditional ad world, they needed traditional advertising to build their brand. And so, that's just a small example. But you go to the US, you go to Britain, there was amazing creativity and amazing optimism, all driven by this new thing, the internet, and what it was going to do to change lives. But that's actually the only period which I would suggest to you is just blind optimism, which I just think is something that we really all need to work on. I hate the idea that we're not optimistic about the future. We should be. It's just crazy that we're not. Well, a lot of people aren't.
Well, it's a terrible thing if we're leaving the next generations,
Yeah.
plural,
Yeah.
worse off
Yeah.
than the previous ones.
Yeah.
Then we're doing them an enormous disservice. And that's our children, our children's children.
That's
How do we bring back some optimism?
Well, there are 2 really important books that are floating around at the moment. One is called Abundance. Now, and a lot of people would have heard.
Ezra Klein?
Yeah. And what's important about Abundance is it's a book which is written by a Democrat, right? So they sort of declare that they are Democrats, in the book, as I'm sure we're all
Ezra
aware.
Klein's in New York Times, right?
Yeah. And really the proposition or the premise of Abundance is the left, what the left has done is the left has put layer upon layer upon layer upon layer upon layer upon society in an effort to do the right thing, but in so doing has suffocated a lot of development. I mean, even housing is a good example. There's so many rules and regulations around housing, all for the right reasons, but actually in the end, it's almost impossible to build a house.
To get something up out of the ground.
Yeah. And so if a ticket price for a house is, say, $1 million to build, probably half of it is red tape and green tape, right? And government taxes. And, it's just everyone gets in the way. And as I say, you can understand how we got to that point. But what's really cool about abundance is a recognition by the Democrats, the left, hang on, we may well have created this situation where there isn't a sense of abundance, a sense of optimism. So that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I find that very interesting. There's another book called The Conservative Futurist. And The Conservative Futurist is all about saying, do you know what? How did we get ourselves into a situation where we believe that the future isn't better for generations? How do we find ourselves in a situation where in 1960, science was very clear in 1960 that the main source of power for the world will be nuclear energy, right? So in 1960, they knew that could be the case. And if that was the case, then of course, greenhouse gases and greenhouse emissions would have been dealt with, right? The other thing, of course, what happened in late 50s into the 60s, the Concorde, there was actually a supersonic jet race to do the best jet. Concorde, of course, was created. Where's the Concorde? Right? Seriously. And they knew in the 1970s, by 2010, something like that, we'll be able to do low-level space flight for passengers. We'll be able to go from New York to London in 3 hours. It'll cost $300. In 1970, they thought that they could get to that point. Right? So we're not there. So we've been suffocated. And being 30 now, it's just bizarre. It's horrible, and we have got to fix it. We've got to get out of people's way.
When you see someone like Jeff Bezos building a rocket to take civilians to space, though, does that give you some
yes.
level of excitement?
Of course, I get very excited about Bezos. I get excited about Musk. Musk is Leonardo da Vinci. He is someone who comes around every 500 years. I'm just making that up, right? Obviously, but wow, what the guy is able to do in one life, with one brain and not much sleep, is quite extraordinary. And you're right. You're right, Sylvia. That is a very good reason for optimism. What we've got to do...
I like to look for the silver linings.
No, so do I. Jeez, I couldn't agree with you more.
Even if it is a rocket shaped like a you-know-what.
Whatever, So yes, those guys, only in America, of course, they have just this amazing, whatever we think of, we're going to try and do.
Industrious.
Yeah. And there is wonderful optimism there, no doubt about that. And the just sheer weight of money, they're able to point money at, at any direction to try and fix things. Yeah, look, infrastructure's not very good. Obviously, welfare state doesn't really exist. It's quite interesting. The Mooch, if you listen to the Mooch.
That's Anthony Scaramucci.
Yeah. When you listen to him,
he's a great podcaster.
He's really good.
Yeah.
And one of the things he talks about is, yes, we in the US, we don't have much of a welfare system. The upside of that being is everyone is so fearful of being poor that they work really hard. So it's quite Well, that's the Mooch. I'm not saying that I agree with that.
He tells it like it is. He tells it like it is.
Yeah, well, I hadn't. That was a new idea for me. So I hadn't heard that as a proposition before. I go, well, okay, all right, righto. Yeah, I'll think on that one.
They definitely do things differently in America.
Oh, yeah.
They do things their own way.
Well, when I first went to the US a long time ago, and I was in a bar, and it was the classic, this bloke, let me buy you a beer, because, he realised I was from out of town. And he was a vacuum cleaner bag salesman.
Wow.
Right? He loved his job. And he could hardly wait for tomorrow to arrive, so he could get back in his car and go and sell more vacuum bags, right? Wow. And my respect for him, well, it's a very strong memory for me. And then I've worked a lot in the US, and so I suppose I've been grabbed by their optimism. They're also amazing at lining up, and I reckon it's like for me, it's American football. You know, in American football, they all get around in the circle and they all agree what they're going to do. And then they, the quarterback, the boss, the quarterback says, here's what we're going to do. They all in a circle. They go, right, let's go and do it. And they all then try and do it. Business in America is the same. They get in a huddle. The boss says, here's what we're going to do. And they just go off and they just work really hard to do it.
Yep.
We're not like that here. Yeah. Sometimes, as a boss, you might say, here's what we're going to do. Yeah, no worries. I'm going to work from home tomorrow. Right? Good luck.
So can I ask you personally, as a father of three children in their 20s and 30s,
Yep.
how have you tried to set your kids up for the future, not in terms of, finances and investments, but in terms of mindset and being hungry and motivated and having the drive to carve their own paths?
Great. Okay, how? I hope, and I think
you didn't think this was a parenting podcast, but we sometimes we stray.
No, that's not at all. I hope, and I believe that they're confident in their own abilities. One of the things that parents mustn't do is say, look, Sylvia, just don't get ahead of yourself, or Sylvia, stop, don't believe your own BS, right? A lot of parents say things like that. That is a disaster. The number one thing. The number one thing that a parent is the number one fan of their children. Every single other interaction that they have, even with their partners, is potentially loaded. Certainly with colleagues, business partners, it's potentially, as I say, loaded, or there's an agenda. There's no agenda with mum or dad, right? So the only agenda is you want your children to be healthy, happy, strong, creative, decent, have good values. And then you believe, if that's what they are, that they'll succeed, in whatever they choose to do. I also like the notion that they can impact the world around them positively, and they ought to do that. I would hope that, it doesn't matter how small that world is around them, they should be able to, I think, impact it positively. Yeah.
Leave a positive mark.
Yeah, and, and I suppose at a very banal level, parenting sense, I always had a very strong view. This may have even appeared on the back door occasionally. So, a frowny face and a smiley face, and then underneath it, it would say, it's a choice. Right?
Yeah, you get one or the other.
Yeah, well, radiators or drains.
Yeah.
A speech I used to do at an advertising agencies. Just have a picture of a drain, as in, water drain, and have a picture of a radiator, as in a heater, and just say it's your choice, right? And if you want to be a drain, then you know what? Go and work somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I have a strong view on that.
No one wants a drain. No.
Well, why would I? If I'm a boss and I'm writing the checks, why would I write a check to a drain?
Exactly. Yeah.
Why would you?
Exactly.
Seriously.
Anyway. Suck the life out of you.
Yeah.
No one wants that.
Well, who wants that?
Do you know what? Do you know what I love? What gives me life is Gruen transfer. And I've been watching it since, I guess, probably my early 20s, maybe my uni days.
It's been around for a long time.
Journalism, I studied politics.
Yeah.
I had no interest in advertising. But I guess that show has proven that we are all invested in advertising.
Yes.
And that's why it's been so successful over the years. Tell me when you first, was it Andrew Denton who called you about that?
Yep. So yes. So the quick story is I was on Virginia Trioli on the ABC as a result of Harold Mitchell. Harold Mitchell, who was, until recently he passed away, he was the most powerful man in media, really. And he rang me one day and said, I am on Virginia Trioli every week on a Monday, I think, Monday at 4:00. Would you like to share it with me? So that in itself was a very interesting, you could argue that phone call changed everything for me, because then I'm on Virginia. Virginia then moved to Sydney, and she asked if I could still do it whilst being a Melburnian. And I was in Sydney a lot of the time anyway, so it was easy. Andrew Denton heard me on the ABC, and I think I'm right in saying that confirmed in his mind there was an idea in talking about advertising and advertising ideas and how it works. And so, then fast forward, I was asked to, on one weekend, to do a screen test, I suppose it was what it was. And I was sitting in a seat that I've been in for 16 years, and there was music and there was a set, and Will Anderson was there, and Todd was across the road, and I thought, hang on, this is actually real. And then I received a phone call from Andrew, and he said, we'd like you to do it. And I did say, I said yes. Why? And he asked me, why did I say yes? And I said yes because I didn't want any other, as I said, I didn't want any other bastard to do it.
Yeah.
And that is actually true, because if I wasn't there, then one of my competitors would be there. And the advertising industry is highly competitive. One of the reasons why it's a beautiful industry to be in is because there are fights. It's like a creative fight every day. Best idea wins. Best talent wins. Yeah, and so if I wasn't sitting there, then the managing director of Saatchi & Saatchi would be there. So I did it from that point of view, and then of course over time, it took a long time though, 3 or 4 years, I started to like it, and so I said yes because I enjoyed it, and it was good for business, and life changed.
Did you know Todd Sampson before that show?
No, that's another lovely quote from the time when I was asked, so Todd Sampson's the trade press, So Todd Sampson is on, what do you think of that? And my response was, who the fuck is he? So, which is the competitive nature of advertising, Sylvia, because everyone's your enemy, really.
Got to cut him down.
Yeah, well, it is a bit of that. Yeah. I mean, we used to just say, so there's a bag of business out there in the middle of the road. It's just a race to get there. Yeah. And people...
It's like nippers chasing on the sand to the stick in the ground.
Yeah, flags. It is flags. That's a great analogy. That's exactly what it is. And as you know, only the fittest wins in flags. Yeah. And so being that person is what advertising is all about. It's very easy to be an advertising agency. There's you and I could start one right now. Yeah. There's no barriers to entry. We don't have to buy anything.
Jeffries and Howcroft.
Sure. You don't have to buy anything. You don't have to. I suppose you got to buy maybe a computer and a printer, but you get what I mean.
Yeah.
No barriers to entry.
Yeah.
And so that's why, one of the reasons why it's so competitive. And also, everyone needs an advertising agency. Yeah. So no matter how big or small, there is a role, even if the role is for just design. Yeah. Design a business card, because the business card's an ad, So everyone needs it. Again, that's why it's such a, dynamic. And that's why, I want that dynamism for everyone, really.
Yeah. You clearly weren't, chasing a career in television when that came along. But how has Gruen changed the trajectory of your career?
Well, it changed everything. Yeah. And in fact, when I said yes and had all that conversation with Andrew, he sent me a note saying nothing will be the same again. Yeah. And TV does change everything, Sylvia, as you know, changes everything.
How do you describe that?
Well, your life... Well, I would go to client meetings and I would say about an ad, any ad. I'd say, well, that ad is going to do X, Y, Z. And all of a sudden the words had more power. Yeah. Now, maybe that's unfair for others, but then when you get used to the idea that those words have more power, then it gives you an opportunity to do a better job, frankly. And so I felt like I did a better job. In my commercial life, just because the words had more weight. It's unfair in a way, right? But it's just the reality.
Like the prestige, the extra credibility of.
Well, the show worked. I mean, if it hadn't have worked, well, then obviously we wouldn't care. But the show did work, and it worked because it's obviously good fun, and it can be very cynical, it can be nasty sometimes. But it was about ideas, and that it made me better, I suppose. Yeah, it made me better at talking about ideas, because when the camera's on you and you're on a stage and there's an audience there, you get pretty good on your feet. And so, and I was okay at the start, but by the end, you just feel fitter and more capable. And all of a sudden, you're presenting to boards where advertising people work really hard to get up the food chain at the client end. It's one of the great ambitions of ad people is you want to speak to the CEO. If you're working on the biggest piece of business, a big piece of business, you spend a lot of time not speaking to the ultimate decision maker. And so all of a sudden I was able to do that. Yeah? And then one thing led to another, to the point that I'm now on 3 breakfast. And and that wouldn't have happened unless Gruen happened.
Okay, before we go into your best ofs,
Okay.
and your classic hits
Classic
of the
hits.
advertising career, how would you, as an advertiser, get Australia back on track?
It's one of those funny things, isn't it? Where could advertising help? It actually could. Most definitely, it could do it. It is harder these days to have an impact in ads, but you can still do it. And in a political context, Palmer, the United Australia Party, what Palmer does is it proves that you can create advertising that everyone sees. Right? So not everyone voted, obviously.
It doesn't always work. Yeah.
Well, and I'm not looking at it in a political context. Like, did that get a vote? I'm just looking at it in terms of
awareness.
Awareness. Thank you. I paint everything yellow. I have a face. I spend $60 million over a 6-week period, and you can be seen. Right. So good news.
You couldn't unsee it.
Right.
It was everywhere.
Precisely. So therefore, the idea that you perhaps can't create a mass market brand these days, I don't buy. Right? You need money to be able to do it. Telstra is also a very good example. So Telstra is doing a brilliant job right now, creatively and with their media expenditure. So if you get people with Telstra size money, Telstra size capability. So the buyer of the advertising at Telstra is an old ad guy. Brent Smart is his name. He was a very successful advertising person, so he knows what a good idea looks like.
What are they getting right?
Well, they're getting quite a few. Okay, they're spending the right amount of money.
Yeah.
They are obsessive about craft, and that sounds sort of banal in a way. But what's interesting about great advertising is you can tell the difference without being able to articulate it on an ad that has spent on an ad that's had $1,000 hours spent on it versus an ad that's had 10 hours spent on it, or 50 or 100 hours. You can just tell. And the craft actually contributes to how you view the brand. And they are doing it. Telstra is doing it brilliantly. They've got a fabulous creative partnership with an agency. And so if you get people like the Telstra buyer, the Telstra advertising agency, and Palmer-esque money, you could create a different perspective about Australia. And obviously we would want that to be, I would want that, I'm sure you're with me, one of optimism and growth. And I would have a little bit of, could you please get out of my way as well? What people think Australians are and what we actually are, there's quite a big gap. Yeah, so the Brits and the US, they would see us as a great fighting spirit and entrepreneurial, and it's not really necessarily what we actually. It's only half true, actually. Now I think about that, because there's plenty of Australians that do very, very well. There really is. If only the government would get out of our way, is perhaps the point I'm trying to make.
We've had a bit of identity shift. What is great about being an Australian?
Well, okay, so
I mean, as a journalist who covers natural disasters and events like that quite often, and I see the worst of what life can throw at you, but I see the best of people when I turn up to a scene like that. And I don't know to what extent you see that in other countries, but when I turn up to a scene in Australia like that, you see this generosity of spirit, which I think is truly and uniquely Australian.
Yeah.
And I always think and cling to that when Australia's having a tough period. I think, well, no one else in the world could really have what we have on that level.
Excellent. So May 8, I think, is really something that should be celebrated. So Mate Day. And there's a bit of a move afoot to turn that into something.
I love that.
Yeah. So and that would be uniquely Australian.
Yeah.
To on May the 8th celebrate your mates, And there can be an advertising campaign around that. Which I hope there will be. I have got a little bit of vested interest in that. My son's doing some work on May 8, so that's why I know a bit about it. But it's a great idea.
It's brilliant.
Yeah. And the spirit of Australians, most definitely. I don't think we work hard enough at a communication level to celebrate Australia. So if you go back to 1995, I used to have the Australian Citizenship Campaign advertising. The government spent $15 million a year just saying, hey, those of you that would like to become a citizen, do it on Australia Day. the subtext of the advertising was it's a pretty good country, right? And it's a country that we should celebrate, and everyone's welcome. It was very much a unifying message. And sure enough, what would happen on Australia Day, there'd be huge celebrations and people would sign up and become Australians. And then they'd have the photograph, with the local member and their citizenship certificate. So unfortunately, we don't do that anymore. And I mean, imagine trying to do that on Australia Day now. You just wouldn't try, right? So the government actually has got to, they are the ones that are responsible for saying, here is the day that we are going to celebrate being Australian. Right? They just need to determine what that is, because we've had a decade now, more than a decade, of having a fight every single year, and I'm sure all of us are over it.
Yeah.
Okay. So if it's not the 26th of January, then pick another day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just okay. So Federation. So 1901, first day of Federation. There's a good day. That might be a problem because that is the colonials winning, right? So maybe we can't do that, but maybe it is May 8th, So let's find a day. And yes, advertising can play a role, Sylvia, in saying, okay, how lucky are we?
Mateship is at the core of being an Australian.
Yeah, the good mateship. Yes,
yeah.
I know.
There you go.
Yeah, it's
We're
fun.
brainstorming as we go.
Yeah, I do like it. I genuinely think that is the right idea. And what's happened recently, of course, is we've allowed Northern Hemisphere fights to come into our country. And that, again, is about leadership. So if you go back to the 1880s, when I read this, Sylvia, I just loved it. In the 1880s, the governor of Victoria, there was a fight up on Spring Street between the Protestants and the Catholics. Yeah, and the governor said, hey, listen, you lot, don't be bringing your Northern Hemisphere fights here. And I think that we could just repeat that. Yeah, don't be bringing your Northern Hemisphere fights here. By the way, everyone is equal. In the same article, the other great fact, get this. So no matter which denomination you were, so whether you're a Baptist or Catholic or Church of England or Presbyterian or Methodist or whatever, so in that era in Melbourne, probably Victoria, every denomination got the same amount of money, right? So we're not going to say, we're going to be a Catholic state. It's like, no matter which denomination you are, here's the money, go and build a church. So that is true to who and what we are. So whether you're Muslim or Jewish or a Buddhist or whatever, everyone's welcome.
You're treated equally.
Yeah, treated equally. And on May 8th, there we are, we're on to
there
this,
you
aren't
go.
we, Sylvia? It's pretty good, isn't it?
I'm sold.
Yeah, good.
Okay, I mean, you're the king at this stuff. What is, of all your campaigns over the years, is there one that you're most proud of?
You know what? We did some great work for the AFL when I was at George Patterson Winder. We did some really excellent work for the AFL. And you might remember there was a commercial where Chris Judd was on a horse racing track. Yeah. And Kaczynski from St Kilda, he was on a Manchester United pitch, and Jonathan Brown was on a gridiron pitch, and Aaron Davey was on a basketball court, and it was all about the skills of, Australian rules footballers. Buddy Franklin kicking a goal at the end of the commercial was beautifully made. Like we were talking about craft before. Oh my God. It was really good. It was as good as you could get anywhere in the world. Hollywood advertising, same thing. CGI and all that world, right? That probably is my favourite commercial, in that the backstory's a cracker, as well as the effect that the ad actually had. So yeah, that would be. I mean, I've been involved with lots of stuff that's won. Go to Cannes, win gold, all that stuff. Lots of, and very early on, my first London job. In the first year of that first London job, I was involved with a campaign that won, gold at Cannes. So I was very fortunate to be in teams that were very, very, very good.
How do you see the landscape shifting in advertising now? I mean, it's so fractured.
Yeah, it's difficult.
I work in television.
It's
I
hard.
know the challenges.
Yeah.
And people are getting cut through using influencers on social media now.
Yeah.
There are so many ways to spend your advertising dollars.
That's right.
How do you keep up with that? What do you see as sort of the most effective way to cut through in this day and age?
It's you know what? I think you've got to cut your cloth according to who and what you are, which is a bit of a cop-out, but I think that's the truth. If you're a $100 million spender, you are going to spend a lot of money in traditional media, right? You're still going to spend 25, 30 million on television. You're going to spend a few million on radio. You're going to spend on outdoor advertising. Although outdoor advertising is a brilliant cut-through media, whether it's 1850 or 2050, outdoor will still play a really superior role. It's also
we're talking billboards.
Yeah, billboards. Yeah, at an advertising craft level, ad people love a billboard more than anything. Yeah, like a beautiful billboard. They're very hard to do.
Interesting.
They're really hard to do. Yeah, but that's like the purest of all mediums.
I'll probably take that for granted.
Yeah.
As a humble consumer.
Well, there isn't very many good ones.
Yeah.
That's because they're very hard to do. And a very good billboard, it'll tend to have an idea within it. And a very good billboard will require a little bit of thought by the consumer. Yeah, so they'll need a beat or two, or they might need to see it a few times, and as a result of that, they're hard to buy. If you're the client, isn't that too clever? It's like, well, you got to make a decision. Am I actually appealing to people because they're clever, or am I going to just dumb the whole thing down?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there isn't a lot of the clever stuff. So if you're spending $100 million, you'll still do a lot of traditional stuff. If you've got a much smaller budget, well, of course, all the tools are available to you. And, this is where influence plays a really big role. And I think what's very interesting, if you look at Jackie Felgate on our network, she is actually showing, I think, there's an interesting model, social media meets radio, radio meets social media. Because radio, of course, is the original social media. That's where you have the conversation. And clearly what you're doing online is having a conversation. I think she's doing an amazing job. Creating
She's a great operator.
Yeah. She's creating a model. I mean, I like calling it social radio. And that is important because what radio needs to do is, of course, appeal to the younger media buyers. So younger media buyers, they aren't necessarily going to be buying radio. They should be, because the numbers would prove that they should, but they're not necessarily going to do that. You call it social radio, you connect it to social media, and
It's
you get
multi-platform.
Exactly. And you get one feed in the other. And if you listen to Jackie's radio show, she will talk about, I've just posted that video on, Felgate. And then what's on Felgate, what's coming in on Felgate on her Instagram, will then be used on the radio. Yeah? And then the aggregated audience is really good. Right?
Yeah.
And in the end, what do advertisers want? They want audience. And that lovely thing that they call time spent listening, TSL.
Yep.
Yeah.
They love data.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And, the opportunity to see advertising is, in the end, what advertisers are buying. So I'm very energised by what's going on there. I think that is a really beautiful model. People still watch television. It's just there's so much television to watch. So again, it just makes it harder. But all good big advertisers still use telly. Don't worry.
Yeah, good. Well, I'm glad to hear that. I mean, I guess sometimes as a journalist, I worry about, I suppose, the future of our model.
Yeah.
Given we mostly, I mean, there's such, a splintering going on between traditional media and new media.
Yeah.
But a lot of the new media couldn't exist without the work of traditional media.
No doubt about that.
But there's money falling through the floor in some of those areas.
That's right.
We're fortunate to work at Nine, which is Australia's biggest media company.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of strength that comes with that.
Yeah.
Not necessarily at other organisations that seem to be, scrambling and merging and the rest of it. Where do you see us heading in traditional media?
Well, okay, telly will still be around. Yeah, and TV might have to find a way to be a bit more spontaneous. I mean, one of the issues, one of the difficulties that TV has is that it wants everything to be neat. Everything's got to be in a box with a bow, with very, very little room to move. Yeah, and I think that is going to become less and less appealing. Yeah,
that's really interesting.
Yeah, there needs to be more spontaneity and risk taking. As you know, Sylvia, I mean, live television, that is really hard to do.
It's an extreme sport, especially early in the morning.
Yeah, it is an extreme sport, no doubt about it. And the ability to do that is totally underestimated. Not just the ability to get out of bed, but to get out of bed, perform, and especially when you've got to look down the barrel of the camera. That is, as you know, right? That's very, very hard to do. But what all that does is that that constipates us. It constrains us. We're putting on a straitjacket, and so somehow, if there's a way to just loosen up a bit, I think that there's maybe some upside in that. It's very important that sport remains on free-to-air television.
Agree.
Yeah. And there is the anti-siphoning list, there's lobbying that goes on all the time around the anti-siphoning list. However, it just has to be the case. If I'm going to watch the Melbourne Cup, it has to be on free-to-air television. Yeah. It just has to be. That's part of being an Australian.
The State of Origin, the NRL Grand Final, the AFL Grand Final. Yeah. It's got to be accessible to all.
That's right. You cannot put these things behind a paywall. And we know, say, in Britain where cricket went behind a paywall, all of a sudden cricket participation dropped. And what's interesting, if you're in charge of cricket, what you've got to get your head around is it doesn't matter if all I'm doing is, as I flick the channels on free-to-air, I'm flicking. If I just a cricket match appears, there's a test match there, even if I've only watched it for 3 seconds, it means it's part of my life. Right? If I've got to get into a paywall and go through an app and go through the process, then you're only getting active viewers, people that are actively interested. So there's a magical element to how the free-to-air stuff works when it comes to sport, I think, in particular.
So on a career level, Russell, at this stage in your life, between Tenet, which is a consulting business, of which you're a partner.
I am a partner. I helped start it.
So Tenet and 3AW and Gruen transfer and whatever else you've got sprinkled in between. How do you describe this stage of your career?
Well, thank you for that question. Probably the most exciting stage. Yes. Yeah, it would be. I mean, let's say if we chunk it into decades, I've had good times. I like working hard.
Clearly.
I do like working hard. So
you enjoy what you do, clearly.
Yeah. And if I didn't enjoy it, then I would try and find something else to do. So yes, I enjoy working hard. The obviously breakfast radio, that is. It's amazing. It's an amazing show. It is an incredible show. The enthusiasm of the listeners back to the show is, something to it's a
force, isn't it?
It's a force. And easy to say it's a privilege to be there. It is, right? Ross Stevenson's done it forever. He's a total genius. He probably is the best broadcaster in the world. I mean, he's unbelievable at it. And someone was going to get to sit opposite him, and that someone got to be me. So, I'm pretty lucky, right? I managed to stay in touch with business via the Tenet consultancy. That is, again, very important for me because I just love business. Yeah, I love ideas. I love talking about business. Yeah, it's not really about money, actually. It's just, let's see if we can get a business up and running, or give business a hand, give them a perspective about what they should do with their brand, their advertising. No, I'm very fortunate on that front. My son's got an agency called Gruen that's doing Mate, and so I try and give him a hand as well. My daughter, she's got a design company. I try and give her a hand. My son's got an art business. I try and give him a hand. So, there's plenty on.
Plenty on.
Yeah.
Life is full. Yeah. Which is a beautiful thing.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, so if we go back to the start, and if you're speaking to a 30-year-old today who's feeling like the last generation has really effed it for them and it's all stacked up against them, what do you say? What advice do you give them to find their way through all of that?
Okay, you have to find a way to be able to not only pay for yourself, but to pay for your future. It's very, very important that it's not so much look for your passion. It's not really that. You've got to find something that you're good at. And when you find that thing that you're good at, double down on it, triple down on it, do all you possibly can to be the very best at it. I think that is, right. I think that's good advice. Yeah. Work hard. And if you can, work for yourself or create a company, create a business. If you have a look at investing in the stock market as opposed to property, that might be a smart move as well. Certainly in the...
Get in early.
Yeah. There is a lot to be said for that. And I think if you can do the numbers, I'm literally not an expert on that, but we talk about it a lot on the radio. You know what, Scott Pape, I mean, literally, Barefoot Investor, just get his book and do what he says.
Exactly.
Don't you reckon?
100%. Yeah. He's laid it all out for us.
He has laid it all out.
Yeah.
I gave that book to my daughter when she's probably 20, and I think that I'm pretty sure she does run her life in the Scott Pape method, and as a result, I've got great confidence in her and her future. I'm certain that
she'll take the right steps.
Yeah, that she's got the right administrative background thanks to that book. I mean, you're right, Sylvia. He has said, here it is.
Yeah,
right?
Here's the manual. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, so why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we listen?
Yeah, precisely. So, I don't know, have I answered the question? I think just lead a creative, interesting life. Do your best to do that would be, I suppose, ultimately my advice.
Very good advice. Well, it has just hit 4 o'clock as we're recording, which means it's probably your bedtime.
You're pretty close.
So, if not cocktail hour. Yeah. So one or the other. Yeah. You're very generous to give us some time, Russell. I really appreciate it.
Cheers, Sylvia. Good on you. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.